you're not live.
Yeah, saying we're not live right now.
I didn't hit go live.
Wow. Welcome to Metro AV Tech Tips. I'm Brent.
I'm Adam.
Just in case you're wondering why we're late, Adam.
Did not hit the button.
So, just in case you guys wondering, we just did 5 minutes of great material.
Oh, it's great material. It was wonderful.
For no good reason.
Yeah. So, Brent, let's go ahead and start it off.
This is where you guys get your tech tips from.
This is, yeah, but yeah, thank you
Tech
so
tip
much.
number one, hit the live button.
Hit the go live button. Hey, Mark, thanks for the question. FWT, you missed it. I roasted you. I told you exactly why we were late, all that kind of good stuff.
Which had nothing to do with why we're actually late.
Yeah, so anyways, we are here. So everybody who stuck around while we were late, thank you so much for waiting for us.
It is our, actually, it's his mistake.
Yes,
I'm blaming it all on Adam today.
Yep, we're going to blame it on me today.
So, before we get going, because we got a little bit of catching up to do, today's title is Wi-Fi.
Yes.
Wi-Fi. But before we get into Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi, tell us a little bit about what we're doing this week.
So we've been talking about this series right now. We're on episode 5, of course. We have a 6-part series where we're going to be talking about networking basics. And this is your opportunity right now. Leave us a comment in the chat section over here and down in the comment section below for a chance to win this 4-channel PoE NVR kit from our new SpyClots Pro system. It's a 4K capable cameras. It comes with 4 of them. It's expandable up to 16 cameras, and this is your opportunity to win that system, so feel free to put it over here.
And how do they win?
They leave a comment, a question, or anything over here in the chat section or in the comment section below. And if you haven't watched any of our other episodes from this Networking Basics series, go back and watch those. Leave a comment there as well for an additional chance to win that system.
And what other forums can they find us on?
So you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and a bunch of other places as well. Our website, of
and
course,
obviously
will have
on
all of
YouTube,
those.
where we are now.
Yep, and so like, share, subscribe, hit that bell notification to let you know whenever we either upload something or go live, which of course is every
Wednesday at 3 p.m.
At
or
3
actually
p.m.
today, 3:05 p.m.
You know, yeah, so there you go.
One of the things you guys did miss earlier is basically I'm groveling. We will happily work for lunch cards, you know, gift certificates from anywhere because we're not proud.
Right.
But please send money.
I mean, I'm a little proud. I mean,
I'm over it.
You're
I'm
over it
old gray and over being proud.
Exactly.
So, since today's topic is Wi-Fi,
yes,
and we've kind of been down this route for the first 5 minutes, we're going to start over.
Yep.
Tell me, what is Wi-Fi and what does it mean, Adam?
Okay. So, what does Wi-Fi mean? Wi-Fi means nothing. It doesn't mean anything. So when you see the word Wi-Fi, you may think, oh, it's wireless fidelity. You would not be wrong to think that. However, that's not the right answer. Wi-Fi doesn't mean anything. If you go actually and do some research on it, you'll find out that this is a quote from a Mr. Phil Belanger. I'm promising you I've pronounced that incorrectly. Who was a founding member of the Wi-Fi Belanger, yeah, sure. He was a founding member of the Wi-Fi Alliance who presided over the election or the selection of the name Wi-Fi. He says Wi-Fi doesn't stand for anything.
Now, what we have tried to find and have not yet is what the other options were.
Yeah, I did look for them because he said in there the quote continues where he basically says that there was it was selected from a group of 10 different names, and I looked everywhere for him to see what else it could have been named because it was probably going to be something kind of interesting. It may have been something that we all would have liked better than Wi-Fi.
Now, I'm sitting in my little quiet office, as far as you know, all by myself, and Adam comes running up. It's like, guess what I learned?
Brent, what does Wi-Fi mean? And you said,
I don't know. Wireless fidelity?
Nope.
Not a damn thing.
So it was actually the term Wi-Fi was actually was invented by a company named Interbrand. It's a company out of New York. They also came up with the different brand names like for Prozac, Compaq, oneworld, Imation, and then other
so
known
marketing,
brands.
Basically, they do marketing for companies.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Now, all that's well and good, but this next part really shocked me.
Yeah.
So, forget the word Wi-Fi for a moment.
Sure.
Where did wireless Ethernet transmissions, as we know them, start?
So what is the history of Wi-Fi?
Yes.
Okay, so basically, this is actually really interesting. So you would think, and actually well, it's too late now, but you can ask yourself, when do you think the first instance of Wi-Fi, as it's known now, was ever used? And you can ask yourself.
The word or the actual? Something doing.
The transmission of wireless data, right? So other than, of course, because technically when you were to transmit over radio, like, you know, AM or FM radio, technically you're transmitting data because that's what's happening. However, we're talking more specifically about packets of data for
and
like
computer-based
systems.
information.
Exactly. So
Now,
ask
I
Al
got
Gore.
this one entirely wrong when you asked me this the other day.
Al Gore invented the internet. Really great comment.
Well, obviously we're all flooded now anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so
And by the way, who was that from?
that was from FWT.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
When we are the first instance of wireless data transmission was
As
actually,
we know it.
was actually done by the University of Hawaii.
And where was this done?
In Hawaii. It was actually it was in Hawaii, and what they were doing is they were actually transmitting data from every one of the main islands to one of the other main islands. And so it was actually it was necessary for them because the University of Hawaii was using it at that point, but it was the first public instance or demonstration of a wireless packet data network. Now, it was later developed into what is called ALOHAnet, which I thought was
And I
really,
love this one. And we really wanted to put the logo up because it's very new agey.
Yeah,
with the beautiful flower
says
and the
Aloha.
words Aloha.
Yeah, no, it's great. Now, what's really great about it is that was the first instance that it was used. Now, you can actually trace back the entirety of the internet, so to speak, back to them because technically, ALOHAnet random access, which is a type of engineering speak or whatever that they created, what the ALOHAnet random access is actually used inside of the Ethernet standard as well. So without this wireless transmission, so it's almost like you've got the chicken before the egg, or the egg before the chicken.
That Hawaii?
Without Hawaii, you know, you wouldn't have a
Robust wireless
internet connection at all. I mean, you wouldn't have an Ethernet connection at all. So you can thank the University of Hawaii for the internet as it is today. So of course, anybody who you know, if anybody's watching from Hawaii or the University of Hawaii, thank you very much for it.
Now, as best as I can tell from the notes, and you're excited.
Oh, by the way, that was back in 1971.
Yes, it was.
Yes.
Now, and you're
Right?
excited discussions with me on this week.
Yeah.
Basically, all that really happened for the next 20 years was essentially a refinement, not a revolution.
Right.
Of ALOHAnet until
1991. So at 1991, the when Wi-Fi was technically created, and it was actually then we jump into the other side of the world essentially, where we go to the Netherlands in 1991,
where it's cold and wet,
where
and
it's cold,
drizzly.
So the NCR Corporation, AT&T Corp, created what was called WaveLAN. So WaveLAN, which is which
was built upon ALOHAnet.
It was actually developed for cashier systems, so POS systems at that time, which is why they created it. They were trying to create some kind of wireless transmission so that they could set up cashiers and registers and stuff throughout the store.
Without having large, hard infrastructures.
So from there, in 1997, the 802.11 was ratified, and at that first stage, it provided 2 megabits of information. It allowed for 2 megabits per second.
Basically, hello.
A little bit more than that. I mean, because Aloha. Right? Yeah, there you go. So then from there, we jump up to 1999, where 802.11b was created. And it provided 11 megabits on the 2.4.
And we thought that was screaming.
So to get this, in 802.11a, which is actually created after B, technically, it provided 27 megabits of information on 5G. So even at that time, we had 5G. So 5G, people thought that 5G was relatively new. It's not that new.
Well, now, in working here at that time, B was the standard. You plug in your wireless card to your laptop because it wasn't built in.
Oh,
then.
it had that. It was like a PCI slot thing that went in there.
Yep.
Oh yeah, that was great.
For the big card, and I remember it's like, A was just such. Oh man, can we really go fast now?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, and with and actually, that Mark, you good point. He says the ALOHAnet used a new method of medium access, Aloha random access, and experimental ultra high frequency for its operation. You are correct. I also have found that information on the Wikipedia page. So with that, really good information on that as well. Pardon me, 802.11a provided 27 megabits And it also used OFDM, which splits the data to multiple carrier frequencies. And we'll get into that a little bit here in a little bit, because frequencies are extremely important when it comes to Wi-Fi, and we'll discuss that here in a little bit as well. By the way,
I'm not expected to do push-ups again, am I?
No.
Okay, that's good.
You showed that earlier. Yeah, exactly. By the way, everybody, we're trying something new today. All of my show notes that I have here in front of me is also in the description as well, so you can actually read along with us if you'd like with it. So feel free to take a look at that. There's also links to some of the information of where I found this information, so you can do your own research. So feel free to look at that as well. I would actually,
for those of you that are Methodist, we'll call this responsive reading.
Yeah, exactly.
It'll be in red at the...
When you actually going back to what we were talking about, that Wi-Fi doesn't mean wireless fidelity. There's a link to that, to the article that actually talks about that. Mr. Where did he go?
Belanger.
So now with there, 2003 is the big time. This is when Wi-Fi really started to take off. This is where it was really, became mainstream, because in 2003, that's when 802.11g, wireless G, was out. Right. This was
now,
when
see,
it was,
again, all this surprises me, because by 2003, for those of us that are old, we had been using PCI cards for several years, and we had no concept that Wi-Fi was such a new thing.
Right.
But it's kind of goes right in line with USB, because USB still was a baby.
Yeah, exactly. Now, with 802.11g, it provided 20 megabits of information, or per second of information, on the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum. So the biggest difference, of course, we went down in speed technically because the 5 gigahertz range versus the 2.4, but we brought up the 2.4 up to 20 megs of
more
speed,
bandwidth.
More bandwidth. From there, we went, of course, to 2009, where 802.11n was created. And it provided 40 megabits per second on both the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz system. That also was where we created the MIMO, M-I-M-O system, so that you could have multiple antennas doing different things. And so you wouldn't have to wait for packet information from a different device, which is another thing that we'll get into later on. 2013, we finally had 802.11ac, also known as Wi-Fi 5, which it provided 3,466 megabits per second. So we jumped up an astronomical amount of data. So we went from 40 megabits of data all the way up to 3,000 megabits.
When did YouTube come out? Do you know?
2004?
I don't know.
2005?
I don't know.
I don't remember when that was. Yeah.
I believe that's right.
2004.
And man,
2005?
it had to be miserable off Wi-Fi in the early days.
Oh yeah.
And it was also very low resolution.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Back then it was.
Now we're streaming 4K HDR content on Wi-Fi.
Well, on Wi-Fi and on YouTube for that matter. So.
Well, there's actually 8K content on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Now it's not technically 8K. It says that it's 8K, but it's not really.
Still high
8K.
bandwidth.
It's still high bandwidth. 2005. See,
it's great to have a producer, by the way.
So 2014 was when 802.11ax was developed and released.
Wasn't that a body spray?
Axe body spray? Yeah, no, there's an E on the end of that. Wi-Fi 6 provides 9,608 megabits per second on the 2.4, the 5, and now the 6 gigahertz range. So now they're now moved on into the 6 gigahertz range, right? Right.
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 Left.
So, also what's interesting is that this is when the Wi-Fi Alliance started calling things Wi-Fi 6, 5, or 4. And so moving forward, you'll start seeing that on packaging or on any kind of marketing for it. You're going to see Wi-Fi 6 for anything that's labeled 802.11ax. So in fact, my new work laptop that they got for me last year is Wi-Fi 6. So I was actually really impressed with that. However,
we don't have a Wi-Fi 6
I
network.
don't have any Wi-Fi 6 anywhere to try it with. So if you if you've used a Wi-Fi 6 before, let me know, because it sounds amazing for what you're going to do with it.
Remind me to ask you about possible distance issues with Wi-Fi 6 when we get to that part.
Yes.
Of the discussion today.
So everything that I've talked about, of course, you'll see down in the description below. There's a link to that as well on Wikipedia, which is, again, as always, Wikipedia is a wealth of knowledge, but just looking at that was really helpful to see all the different variations that are out there. What I've talked about is actually a very small portion of the 802.11 world. There's actually quite a bit that's out there that does other things. So if you're really curious about it, go there and read up on it. It's really good
And
information.
he actually found a really good link after all the notes were created.
Yeah.
That you need to add to...
Yep, it's actually in the description as well there with the Wikipedia link. There's another one that actually goes through, and after I did all my research and stuff, I was doing some more research this morning and stumbled upon this website that had basically my show notes already written out for it. So really good information there.
That and the Verizon site.
And the Verizon site, which we're going to get onto that here next, actually.
So how does Wi-Fi work?
Okay.
Oh, there it is.
How does Wi-Fi work? So with that said, let's see, the experts, oh, okay, never mind. Okay, so how does Wi-Fi work? Well, magic.
Good juju?
Good juju, bad juju, magic. It's just magic. That's all it is. That's really all it is.
Ho, ho, it's magic.
Careful, you're going to get us demonetized.
Never. Damn. Sorry.
Okay, so Wi-Fi works basically on radio waves. Now, there's a lot of other really gobbledygook technology that's built into it as well, which I'm not going to get into today because there's too much. To be perfectly honest, there's too much, but dive down that rabbit
hole. We're not doing
if
math?
that's what you're looking for. No, we're not doing math today. We can do a little bit of math because we're going to talk about the radio frequency sizes and how that has an effect on certain things, which is where you were going with your question, which we'll get into that. But Wi-Fi, essentially, how it works is that you have a broadcast antenna, which is also a transceiver antenna, so it can send and receive data. Sometimes you have two antennas on a system, where one's a transmitter, one's a receiver.
Sometimes they're little tiny things built into a...
Sometimes they're built into a box. Sometimes they actually have an antenna that's actually sticking off the top of it.
Some of them look like spiders.
In this kit. With like the 6 of them sticking out of there, which is not why it's called Wi-Fi 6. It's not 6 because there's 6 antennas. It's just... Anyways, I ran into that while I was doing research as well.
Oh, that somebody asked that question?
Well, someone online, they said, so Wi-Fi, Netgear created Wi-Fi 6 because their routers have 6 antennas on it, right? No, not at all.
I'm really not sure where to go with that.
Me neither. So basically how it works, you've got the 2.4 gigahertz network, you've got the 5 gigahertz network, and now we have the 6 gigahertz network. So we need more bandwidth, right? So we're going into different frequency bands. So what happens is between these antennas, you have an antenna also in your mobile device of some kind. And what happens is essentially just like in radio, FM and AM radio, it sends out this broadcast from the antenna to a receiving antenna. Now that receiving antenna then takes that information, and if it was an FM or AM radio, it would then just be audio, right? It would just be audio at that point. But because we're doing Wi-Fi, because we're doing data at that point,
ones and zeros?
The receiving tuner is actually the correct word for it. The receiving antenna and tuner on the other side pick that up that information. The tuner then takes the information and spits out an electrical signal, which is then data that the CPU then uses. Then, in reverse, it sends the information back to the route or back to the transmitting antenna because it's not just a single transmit and a separate receiving antenna.
Now, are there address headers and all this other stuff involved in this?
Yes, but it actually uses the MAC address. And so what happens is as it broadcasts out, because you can have, and actually this is really good information, let's say I've got my phone, you've got your phone, I've got my watch, there's a laptop there,
my iPad.
Your iPad's over there. There's lots of different devices in this area here
that are on our Wi-Fi net.
The
television.
Yep. So what happens then is as this access point is transmitting data, I keep pointing back here, it's sitting up here on top of our rack back here.
Which is not where to put it, by the way?
No, it's not. Yeah, put it in the center of a room to help you out. So how that works then at that point is it will actually broadcast. Now it's using the MAC address of the device that it's trying to send that packet of information to. And what the receiver tuner is looking for is that MAC address. So instead of all this data being broadcast out and being sent to all these devices at once, and those devices then go into the CPU saying, hey, I've got new information, the CPU then has to say, I don't need that information. It's
I don't even know what it is.
What happens instead is the tuner is specifically looking for that MAC address header on itself. So as that piece actually broadcasts out, it sends out first inside the packet, the first piece of information is the MAC address of the device that it's sending that information to.
So that sits in the header.
Exactly. And then that picks it up. Then at that point, then that device, or let's say the device that does not need that, the tuner is looking for that information so it doesn't bog down the CPU. And so then at that point, the device that it's actually supposed to go to picks up that information, locks it in, and sends it to the CPU. And that's basically how Wi-Fi works. So let's talk about the wireless signal itself. and how it works.
Dun, dun, dun.
So the 2.4 gigahertz network. Also, by the way, everyone, thank you for checking out the video today with us. As always, if you have any questions or comments, leave it over in the chat section over here or down in the comment section below. Of course, you can always contact us at tech support. 386-492-8584 is our number. You can also reach me at my email address. That's adamr@metrohometheater.com.
Or Brent M at metrohometheater.com.
Which will probably be
Changing to metroav.com.
Yep, and that will happen later on, which we'll let you know when that happens as well. But,
However, the old address will continue to work for a while.
yes, it will. Yeah, so
As
feel
does
free.
my original Ethereal Home Theater address.
Yes, it does, and everyone else who had an Ethereal Home Theater address, which I did not, unfortunately.
That's because you're not cool.
Yeah, basically. We'll go with that. So, radio
Yeah.
waves, right?
Now, I have a question on this.
Ah.
Because as we're getting into radio waves, and you may not have the answer, but I'm going to ask anyway.
Okay.
Is this constant amplitude, or is it amplitude modulated?
So, yes, and no. It's AM and it's FM.
Okay.
Yeah. So technically, and actually, this is good information. I didn't put this in the show notes, but this is just
That's
off
why
the
I'm
top of my head.
asking.
Yeah. So when you look at let's look at AM radio. So AM
Amplitude
radio,
modulation.
It's amplitude modulation, and how it transmits the data is a low amplitude is a low note, a high amplitude is a high note, and anywhere in between.
And you adjust volume. It means carries
Exactly.
a lot with.
So if you are listening to an AM radio station, if you hear nothing, that means there's either nothing happening or nothing broadcasting, or the amplitude is super low. If you then hear music playing and somebody hits a cymbal and it, a crash of some kind, then of course the amplitude goes up and it's a much louder signal that comes across your radio. Now, that's how the amplitude is. So when you're looking at the wave, so a small wave is not going to be very loud. A big wave is going to be very loud. It's the amplitude. So from the top of the crest to the bottom of the trough, that's your amplitude. Now, FM stands for
Frequency modulation.
that's where we have differences in the frequency of the signal itself. So when you go to, so say
Much
for
like
instance,
digital data.
much like digital data. When you look at the data when you are listening to an FM radio station, you could say, okay, 101.9 or 102.7. Technically,
Is a carrier.
that's not the frequency that you're listening to. It's the range of frequency that's right around that. And so what will happen is it'll be 102.68 or 7, or really small. 102.6,
there's a gap.
999, whatever, right? Really small. It's within that band of information where the information happens. And so they change. So you have the frequency, which is from peak to peak. Technically, you can do half frequency or quarter frequency.
Wave.
Yeah, quarter wave. But the best way to look at it is from peak to peak, or the easiest way. And what happens is they will change the distance from each peak to change the data. So you may have, for instance, a longer frequency or something that's further away may mean a 0, or it may be silent. So then at that point, as you then bring things much closer together in that frequency band, that is either louder or it's a 1. And that's how essentially Wi-Fi is working. It's actually using a combination of that, which it's too detailed, too much information. If you look at on the show notes, how does Wi-Fi work, there's a web.archive.org address there. Follow that. Actually, of all the companies that put it out, it's Verizon that put this out, which, not to get too political about that, are not very.
They generally try to keep you in the dark.
Yeah, they're not very forthcoming with things usually. But it was really neat to find that, and actually they got rid of it. That's why I had to go to the archive, the web archive for it, the Wayback Machine that they have online. I had to find it from there. Really, really great information as to exactly how that part of it works. Definitely go check it out. Please check it out.
So are you ready to do some artwork?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Before we do the artwork, I'd like to talk about the different frequencies.
That's why I'm ready for the artwork.
Okay. So the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum, and we're talking about frequency now. So that's 12.49 centimeters from peak to peak. So it's actually somewhere around in there, right? Which is roughly 4.9 inches. So when you think of a Wi-Fi signal...
Really 4.9 inches?
I don't know. So, whatever. Moving on. 4.9 inches is, that's the size of the frequency of that wave. So if you were able to see a wireless frequency or a wireless signal, you would see that every peak is about 4.9 inches apart. Now, it's different than that because it's not a wave like this. It's actually a compression that's happening. And anyways, moving on. The 5 gigahertz range is 5.99 centimeters, or 2.36, so it's about half of what a 2.4 is. And then a 6 is almost halved again. It's actually 1.96 inches, so it's right at 2 inches. So, why is that important, Brent?
Well, as we were discussing earlier, it also directly relates to HDMI and bandwidth. When you move up in frequency, you shorten the distance you can go because the energy expended gets sent to other areas.
Right.
And while he's going to do some drawing, my analogy of this was doing push-ups.
Yeah.
If I ask Adam to do 30 push-ups in 5 minutes, he could probably do it.
Yeah.
I couldn't, but he could probably do it.
Sure.
Because he's going to take a break between push-ups.
Right.
He may do 3 or 4, then 3 or 4, then...
Yeah.
But he can do 30 and 5. Now, if I ask him to do that same 30 push-ups in a minute, it's not going to happen because he doesn't have the energy
Right.
to maintain that form in that short a time, because he's having to go up and down
Exactly.
a whole lot faster.
Yep, exactly. So,
Exactly like HDMI and ones and zeros.
Do it right now.
you can do it right now? Do it right now? 30 push-ups in a minute?
In a minute.
Yeah?
Do 50 in a minute.
Do 50. Oh.
Hold on. Just our producer's
Anyways.
feeling awful froggy over here. He just offered to do 30 in a minute.
So, when basically, how does Wi-Fi work? That's the basics of what's happening. Now there's things to take into
When you're
consideration.
looking at 2.4 and 5
Right.
and 6,
Yes,
how is that affected by the environment?
a lot. So when we look at 2.4 gigahertz network, one of the things that we run into is the fact that there are other devices, lots of different devices that have nothing to do with internet or networking, that use that same band of frequencies.
Cordless phones, if they still exist.
Microwaves, like the microwave oven in your kitchen.
Oh, there's a great story on this one.
Oh yeah. So when you're dealing with 2.4, that's what happens, and we've had this happen before. Well, other wireless systems, our legacy SpyClop systems, use the 2.4. This also uses the 2.4 network.
And now
but
this
mostly
is not randomly selected. This is mandated by the feds.
So. Well, yeah. So the federal government does say, okay, if you're going to use Wi-Fi, it has to be within this band, this frequency. If you use the 5, it's within this frequency range. If you use the 6, it's within this. The reason that we use 2.4 on these is the distance, because 2.4 goes further. We were talking about before about the amount of energy that's required to go the distance. So with a 2.4, because there's less peaks and troughs within
In a
the
given period of
2.4,
time.
In a given period of time, it's got more energy to go much farther. It's
And
also,
penetrates walls and other...
Exactly. Yeah, it's able to penetrate different structures, different items much easier.
The lower the wave, anybody that's had a subwoofer in your neighbor's house
Yep.
knows this. The lower the frequency, the easier it penetrates hard surfaces.
So with that, I guess we can kind of move on to the next part.
Then I get to flip the page.
Yeah.
And the next part of the story is, what about security?
What about security?
Now, this is something we have talked about multiple times over the last 5 weeks.
So
because that is the most important part.
Yes, when it comes to Wi-Fi. Now, if you go back and look at a lot of the other episodes that we had for networking, security is a very important thing. Now, with a hardwired network, there's kind of a built-in security feature in that you physically have to be there and physically connected into that network.
Or at least have reasonably good detection equipment.
Yeah, to get into it. Now, at this point with Wi-Fi, we are literally, are there not multiple channels available within that bandwidth? Yes, there are. We're going to get into that.
Oh, must be a Control 4 programmer.
And actually, you're right. You are right. Let me finish up with security, and we're going to go back and talk about that. Really good point, Mark. We're going to go back and talk about that. So, when it comes to Wi-Fi, you've got a kind of a less secure infrastructure, primarily just because of what it is.
It's just out there.
It's out there. It's just out there. So I can take a device out there, and I can set it there, and I can scan the world around me for Wi-Fi signal. And guess what? You're broadcasting your banking information wirelessly, which means that I can pick it up. It's as if I'm standing there yelling out, "My social security number is."
But what is your social security number?
You think I memorized that stuff? So at that point, what's happening then is you're just yelling. So instead of writing it down on like a little note or something like that and passing it over to whoever you're talking to, you're saying to them what it is.
Can I have your social security number?
No. So security know this. They understand it. So way back, oldest type of security standard. So it's just a password, right? there's my SSID, or there's my name of my Wi-Fi. That's what SSID is. It stands for something else, but we're not going to get into that. But when we look at WEP, that was one of the first ones. Now, don't use WEP if you have it as an option. Do not use it. It's only there as a backwards compatibility feature. Do not use it. Get rid of it. So now we have WPA.
Well, we've had WPA.
We've had WPA, which is it's an older standard, which again, it supports more devices than WEP because we now have, more devices nowadays than we did back then. And then, of course, now the current one is WPA2. Now, inside of that, there's also TKIP and there's AES. So that's the different standards as well inside of WPA2, which if you have the ability to, the strongest security that's out there when it comes to those types of passwords and password systems, WPA2 AES is the most secure. Now, most of the time when you hook up a system, you're going to see WPA2-TKIP AES, /AES. And that's primarily going to be out there.
Adapts to either one.
Right. Now, it's encrypting and decrypting data on that wireless transmission as well. And so the AES is a little bit more secure than the TKIP. It's actually a lot more secure than the TKIP. But TKIP is there as for older devices that don't have the AES. So if you have a device or if all of your devices can do AES, do that one. WPA2 AES. That's the best one to do. Now,
go back to the previous question.
Previous question.
Before we go forward, because I want to cover the previous question before we go into the next header.
Are there multiple channels?
Yes, because that will feed into the next question.
So, Mark, great question. He says, are there not multiple channels available within that bandwidth?
Yes, and in the early days, for example, we had a wireless HDMI unit.
Yeah.
That you could, in fact, select channels on. Mm-hmm. This predates you by several years. But it was great because when you got into your system, if your Wi-Fi was on a channel, it's often easier, it was at the time, easier to change the HDMI channel on the send-receive unit than it was to change the Wi-Fi system. Now, most of the Wi-Fi systems have much better control interfaces now. So you can get into them and typically change them unless you have a modem system, from your cable carrier, and kind of good luck on that.
Yes. So what we're going to do, I'm going to switch over here to our top down, and we're going to talk about this.
Math.
Because, and actually, it's not math. What we're looking at here are the different channels. We've got 1 through 14 technically, although here in the States we only have 1 through 11 because that's what we're allowed to use. 12 through 14 is for European
and Japanese
and Asian markets as well. So when we look at this, the different channels. Now this is in the 2.4. Okay. So we're not talking about 5 gigahertz right now, but this is the same concept in the 5, but we're working in the 2.4 for today. So when you have the different channels, this is really great information because you also have different, you select the channel that you are communicating on. So same way that you select a channel when it comes to television. So you're on channel 3 and you're watching something on there, you can change over to a different channel. Now this is still within the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum, but they've taken that 2.4 and broken it down into these 14 different channels. So what we're going to do is we're going to, are you really? That's so great. What we're going to do then is we're going to say, okay, well, I'm going to be on channel 1. That's great. Your device, you're broadcasting on channel 1. Now, channel 1 is actually a little bit more like this. So when we look at channel 1, you're broadcasting inside of this entire area. Now, everybody is on channel 1. All the devices are on channel 1. However, there's a little bit of an overlap. You're going out here onto 3 as well, so you're kind of covering that up a little bit. Now, okay, that's fine.
Hold on a second. Just for the old school guys, remember doing modulation systems in a house?
Yes.
You never did adjacent channels for that exact reason.
Exactly. So you don't want to have those adjacent to each other. So you can say, okay, well, that's fine. I'll go over here to 6. So what's going to happen with 6 is I'm going to go out like this. Did I do that right? Yep, there we go. I'm going to be out here on 6. Now, the same thing, most of the data is happening here on channel 6. However, you have an overlap. It's going out here and it's actually picking up on channel 8 and all the way down to channel 4. So let's say now, of course, that's great. You've got channel 1 or channel 6, or actually it's also channel 11, so that you don't have anything overlapping, right? Now, here's where the problem comes in. This is all well and good, and like Brent said, if you were to pick an adjacent channel or something directly next to it, you're going to have an overlap. So here's what happens. Most everything on these systems, when you go out there and you look at any residential systems, a lot of times what they'll have is their Wi-Fi is on channel 6. Well, then that means that if you're like in an apartment or all the houses are really close together, all of those networks are going to be using channel 6, which means you have everybody overlapping and talking amongst themselves. They've developed certain systems that allow that to happen, but it just means that the overall bandwidth for channel 6 is decreased because everyone is using channel 6. So do yourself a favor and move over here to channel 1. Now, there's a problem with that. Brent, why is there a problem with that?
Well, first off, you need to make sure that all your devices can operate on the same channels. Secondly, you don't want to deal with the rush hour effect, which is channel 6.
Yes.
And as you get down lower, you start to run it out of the bottom end, because even if you're on channel 1, what's below channel 1?
That's actually not too much of a worry because they allow for this over here inside of the wireless spectrum. What happens primarily also is that other systems have been developed with ways to automatically find an open channel where they're not going to be messing with anything else. So you can say, okay, well, I'm going to move off channel 6, I'm going to go to channel 1. Well, here's the thing, unless you verify that there's nobody else on any of these other channels, you may be stepping on your neighbor who is using channel 2 for some reason, because they've decided that, oh, I'm going to use channel 2 because no one else is on channel 2 and their system is automatic and it's now doing something like this. Actually, it's more like this here.
We've certainly taken those calls on video surveillance products.
Yes, and so you can have interference because somebody else has decided to be on channel 2 when you jump over here to channel 1. Now the problem with channel 2 is that channel 6 is also getting interference because there's channel 4. So when you look at this, get yourself a tool like on an Android device where you can use Wi-Fi Analyzer. It's an app, just Wi-Fi Analyzer, which actually will scan your area from wherever you're standing and find out what channel all of these systems are broadcasting on.
Now, if you're doing a house, go to every corner of the house.
Yes.
Take your clipboard and make a chart of this, because the fact that channel 2 works in this location doesn't mean it's going to work in the other locations.
Exactly. So definitely check that out. Okay, so really great question, Mark. Thank you for bringing that back to us so we could cover that as well. When you look at the 5 gigahertz network as well on top of that, you'll actually see that the 5 gigahertz network also has different channels as well. However, it's broken down better. And so when you jump from channel to channel, you don't wind up with too much of an overlap on different channels.
Because the narrower bandwidth helps.
It helps. Now, that's not 100% the case. There is still overlap on that, but usually it's much easier to have channels closer together in that aspect, so you don't get too much of an overlap on it. So, really great question. Thank you for bringing that up. So,
well, and that kind of leads us into our next question.
Yes.
What about large areas?
So, what about large areas, Brent? So,
well, let's take our large area.
Yes.
Now, we are an office within a much bigger environment.
Yes.
With many walls of varying materials.
Yep.
That were haphazardly added through the years.
Yep.
We've got wood, metal, concrete block, drop ceiling, concrete walls. How do we maintain, and we're on our own network here because of tech support, the ability to sign in and help customers.
We're able to do some R&D stuff on it without having to worry about
Metra's incredible firewall.
Yes. So it's almost like the Chinese firewall. So not to make too many jokes about that.
Now, are we running at 2.4 or 5 on our network?
Both. So we do have both.
Because I typically sign in on the 2.4 because I am a little further away.
From our R&D network.
From our R&D network, yes.
Yep. Now, so when we talk about larger areas, so let's take out our R&D. Let's not talk about that. We'll talk about our Metro network, for instance. Now, what happens on our Metro network, we have wireless access points throughout our facility. Now, that's all well and good, except for the fact that normal Wi-Fi devices are expecting one wireless access point. So with that one wireless access point, my phone is going to connect to that one, and it's done. So as I walk away and I get worse and worse coverage, it's still trying to
hang on to that one.
That first one out there. So what do you do about those areas where you can add on an access point in different areas? So how do you deal with those?
To improve bandwidth or coverage.
We've got two options. I can either put in a super high-powered wireless access point, which does exist. They're out there. They're used really well in outdoor applications. What do I do instead? Well, I can put in additional access points and create a roaming system. Not necessarily a mesh system. Mesh is a little bit different. Mesh is where we're using the wireless signal from one access point to another instead of having a hardline connection to it. If you are using mesh networks, Make sure that, of course, your systems that you're putting in, so like Control4, Crestron, which Crestron uses networking now a lot more than they did when you were messing around with it, or other systems like that.
In the dinosaur days.
I was trying to be nice. In systems like that, just make sure that all the communication is going to work correctly. Use the approved list of access points. The nice thing about mesh is that you don't have to worry about a wire, and so systems that require a wire, like this one here, where the NVR still has to be hardwired to the network, it's nice to have that because you can give yourself a wireless connection to that. So, what do you do in large areas where you don't want to use a mesh system and you have the ability to have a wire from one point to another? You've got two options. The first one is a passive roaming system. Arachnus, Package, I think Cisco also has a system like this, and a couple others, where the wireless handoff, or the roaming effect, what's called roaming, is done by, different from Zigbee or Zigbee. Yeah, Wi-Fi is different. Actually, we're going to have another episode on that. That's scheduled a couple weeks from now. We're going to be talking about the difference between Wi-Fi and Zigbee. So, when we look at the different passive roaming, it's up to your device to
decide when to switch to the other point.
Yes. Now it works really well because it actually now has become a standard. It's 802.11r is now what's called fast roaming. For roaming, yes. I don't know that joke. For roaming. So it's up to the device. Now, so long as your device has that, which when fast roaming was first released, one of the problems we were running into is that Apple did not have fast roaming built into it. So people were buying these systems for fast roaming capabilities, and the iPhone would not move from point to point. And so it became a problem. So that is where our second option comes in, where you have an active roaming system where there is a central controller that's managing, the managed roaming system that's managing those devices. So as this device is closer and closer to a certain access point over here, it will say, okay, you're close to that one, you're going to connect to that access point.
And that's done at the central processor. We've got more brains, more capability, so it's more reliable.
It's also that thing where we go back to the idea that an all-in-one device does all those things okay, whereas a standalone device does it really well. So if you have one device that's managing, and its one job is to make sure that you move from access point to access point seamlessly, that works out much better. My personal preference is to look for an active roaming system. I like Luxol a lot for their stuff. Cisco also is another one. I think, I don't know if Package or Arachnus are coming out with a system or not like that, but definitely check those out as well. So my preference is an active system.
It's certainly much more reliable, and you don't wind up with the dead spots either.
Exactly. So let's move on, Brent.
Okay. How do we, well, let's be honest, we're sitting at our desk.
Yeah.
How does an integrator troubleshoot Wi-Fi problems? Now, I ask this because you and I have actually had to go out and troubleshoot Wi-Fi problems.
And this is a common thing that we deal with in tech support, especially because you have wireless camera systems. Pardon me, this one's not wireless. This is the PoE.
But we do have wireless camera systems.
We have wireless systems.
That are kits and standalone wireless products.
How do we troubleshoot that stuff? So, well,
and what tools do you need?
And what tools do you need? So the first part that I would do is get some tools. Now, before we do that, what's step one, Brent?
Reboot, baby.
Reboot.
Reboot early.
Reboot
often.
Honestly, rebooting systems is probably the Ruckus. Thank you. That's the one I was looking for. The experts were saying another brand. Ruckus is another brand. They have both types as well. They have the passive style and the active style.
They have
country
and Western?
They have country and Western.
Both types?
Yeah, both types. So, rebooting is honestly one of the things that is probably the first go-to. Before you call up tech support, honestly, if
Which
your
is
client...
the first thing I'm going to ask you is...
Did you reboot it?
Let's step back. And how long?
Okay, 15 minutes.
15, why?
Because we're letting the capacitance buildup that's built up inside of the system itself to entirely release.
Discharge. And when you typically reboot it, what do you actually want to do?
Start with the modem first.
Disconnect all copper connections.
Yes.
Now, just for what it's worth, and this is semi-funny, I went down and worked on the CFO's son's house.
Right.
And he calls me up and says, something's not working. I said, okay, walk out the front door, take a right, go behind the 3 bushes, unplug the cable, walk away for 15 minutes, plug it back in, call me.
He's going to do a Brent.
It's called the Brent.
He's doing the Brent.
Go.
Luxul, Luxul. Check them out. And Ruckus Unleashed. Really great products out there. So yeah, rebooting, honestly, it's the first step. It's the first thing to do.
Now, if you're having to reboot on more than a very rare occasion, you need to take to the next step.
Yes. Now, and actually doing rebooting, I would recommend scheduling a reboot built into the system as well, using automated systems like that.
That's not cloud-based on the on and off.
Correct, yes. Okay, so step
And
two.
why are we not using a cloud-based outlet for the on and off?
Don't use a 2U-based one because at that point it'll get the off command, but it won't get the on command. So that's basically
if your modems.
So step two, check for changes in the environment. How often do we run into that, Brent?
Well, a new person comes onto the job site, they change a piece of gear, the cable company swaps out the modem.
Yep.
Everything was, your stuff's not working. Well, has anything changed recently? I don't think so. Has the cable company been there? Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What did they do? I don't know, maybe a new modem. Ah.
Yeah. So
But nothing's changed.
check for changes in the environment. Now, there's a caveat to this. If you are installing a system for a client, make sure that you go in and you take notes beforehand as to what's there, because you don't live there, or if you do, you take notes to help remind yourself what's going on anyways. But take notes. Not only take notes, take screenshots, take pictures, take video of what's going on in the environment. And I'm not talking just about devices, I'm talking about structure and paint. As crazy as it sounds,
And glass.
paint and glass and mirrors, they all have an effect
As
on
we
wireless signal.
Both know hurricane glass.
It
Destroys
completely-
Wi-Fi.
Yep, just completely destroys Wi-Fi. And so
Someday
Look,
call
you've
us and
got-
ask us how we know this.
you've got a really great tool in your pocket that takes a lot of great information for you. So get there, download something like Wi-Fi Analyzer. I know it's on Android. I'm not sure if it's on
I'm
iPhone.
sure I've got, hold on a second.
Yeah, check and see if something's on there for that.
Look at my-
But take a snapshot. While you're there, take a screenshot of, do the scan, take a screenshot, save it into that client's folder so that you can see, hey, while I was there on this date, we did a scan for this types of addresses in that area.
I
yes.
use Thing and Net Analyzer.
Yeah, Fing is and Net Analyzer. The experts are saying record MAC address of ISP, modem, or router. Yes, very much
and
so.
I am here to tell you
Yeah.
the son and or grandson of your client can make your life miserable by coming
Yes.
in, and he just changes things to make his game work,
Yeah,
and suddenly your system's down and you don't know why.
exactly.
And they'll disconnect cables and network cables and
Yep.
move stuff around, and why is the HDMI not working? Well, who's been there? Nobody. Then how did this get disconnected?
So take a screenshot of what's going on in the area. Take pictures of what's around the area, the structure. Take note of what's going on there, and then when your client calls up, you can ask them, "Hey, has anything changed recently? Have you put up a new mirror in the hallway? Maybe a giant mirror of some kind or something like that, which has an effect on that stuff.
To put
the
it-
glass.
Yeah. Did you actually buy a plasma television, sir?
Well, yeah, if you're buying it for antique reasons
Yes.
now. Now, also check and see, have they added new devices? Have they went out and bought a new microwave oven? Have they done an upgrade to
Or
their
is their
kitchen?
microwave oven old?
Or is it old and broken? Because the newer ones are better at Faraday caging all
And
that
shielding.
microwave. They're better shielded. The older ones were not as good, but also if it's damaged in some way, it'll allow that
And which
radiation
kind
out.
of takes us back to one of the previous questions. So, what frequency range does microwaves work on?
2.4.
And
Yeah.
who made this decision?
Oh yes. So back in 1985, you can thank your representatives,
federal government.
your federal government back in 1985, whoever was in office at that time. You can thank them for saying to use the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum, because no one's using that. No one's going to use the internet. No one's going to use networking. That's
Yeah,
a
who's
dumb
ever
thing.
heard of
Why would you
Wi-Fi?
ever do that? So you can thank them back in 1985.
Because that's what they gave microwaves.
And yet, have they added other devices in the network and the proximity of the site? And actually,
And
the
not for
experts
nothing,
are saying
have
something.
they got a new neighbor?
Yes, the experts are saying, did the cellular company put up a tower down the street? Yes, 100%. Check and see if they did, because we're using the same frequencies as some cellular connections now, and so you can run into problems with that. So Check and see that. Proximity to neighbors and their Wi-Fi. That's why that Wi-Fi analyzer tool is so good, because you can see, even if you don't see an SSID on there, you can see other networks that are in the area. So you can scan that and find out.
And don't think your cable installers are going to be smart enough to check for channels before they stick that new modem in next door.
Exactly. Now, Brent, this one is this next one was actually one of your favorites that we were talking about before. Firmware updates. So, there's a reason why we say, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Because if it's working, it's not a problem. You don't need to fix it.
It's working.
Yeah, leave it alone. It's working. Except when it comes to networking, because there's people out there that have nefarious reasons and nefarious purposes to go out and try and steal your data.
And updates are almost consistently and constantly security based.
Now, if you don't have your network system set up to do an automatic update, that's not a bad thing, but it doesn't mean that your phone or your laptop or a gaming console doesn't have automatic updates turned on. So now everything's working perfectly fine. An update comes through and, hey, it stopped working. My Wi-Fi is not connecting on my laptop or on the game console or whatever it is. Customer, is there, John, customer, is there by chance a firmware update on some other device? Oh, well, I don't know. There might have been or something. Well, that's okay. Let's go ahead and sign into the Wi-Fi system. Let's see if there's an update available for that fixes a problem that somebody else created because they updated their system.
And we both have dealt with updates that deleted data in devices such as logins, and it does happen.
There is, yes, good point on that. Yes, very much so. Now, the experts, MetaGeek creates a Wi-Fi scan tool for a PC. It looks like a little Wi-Fi dongle, USB dongle that plugs into the side of the laptop, and it will scan. That one's actually much more advanced than the Wi-Fi analyzer. You can actually get into doing things like regular RF or Zigbee.
And looking at noise in the environment.
Noise in the area. So that one's really, really good. It does cost something, the one on your phone. The Wi-Fi analyzer is free on the phone.
However, let's face it, it's a tool.
It's a tool.
And
if you are doing this,
a
it's
good
worth
compression
it.
tool is $100.
Yep.
So spending a couple $100 for something to set up a properly secure and reliable network is a cheap tool.
Yes, make it. Go ahead and pick that up. It's a really good tool. So the firmware update, if it's not broke, don't fix it unless it's networking. Honestly, do an update on the network. If there's a problem and there's an update available, hey, do the update or have it set to do automatic updates. I'm still not 100% on doing automatic updates because too many problems have been created by automatic updates, but it's one of those first steps. You've done the reboot, you've checked the environment, there's an update, do the update. Hey, it's working wonderful. You don't have to call anybody. So, number 4, check the infrastructure. What have
Bad cables?
What have we learned, Brent?
Ports. Good God, we have ports. We spent hours trying to find a problem one night that was a bad port on the switch.
Yeah. We ran into
as I recall, it's like, okay, Adam, just move the wire.
Just for kicks and giggles.
Move the wire.
Just move it. See what happens.
It's working.
It's working. Now, not only that, but we found out that we luckily had a backup switch. And so we thought
we literally had every single thing in this rack has a physical backup unused in the rack.
So we moved it from that switch to a different switch, and everything started working fine. So, hey, have a backup, have something available on the truck that's maybe not the same model, but it's a type of backup that you would use, like just a regular switch.
Yeah.
And throw it in there and see if it
whatever
starts working.
brand you deal with on a regular basis, buy one extra.
It's one of those things that's good troubleshooting practices. So, check the infrastructure, damage to the Ethernet cables, damage to PoE switches or inserters.
Yeah, if you've got pets or children.
Or rodents that are not pets.
Yes.
You know, I mean, it's one of those things that...
Having crawled through an attic recently to replace wires for blinds and network wraps.
It happens.
Squirrels eat stuff.
Well, you wouldn't think that, and here's the thing, a lot of people think that, the IT guy's saying that, a rat chewed through it, so we don't really know what the problem is. Well, it comes off as one of those things, those answers that, it's
like the reboot statement.
Yeah, exactly.
Bullshit.
It's not a BS statement. It's a real thing. It's a real thing to do. And now we know that rodents do chew through wires. It happens.
Now.
Yeah.
We've known that for years.
So, Brent, what's the last thing?
Well, we still got to check our PoE switches and our hardware.
Yes. Yeah, make sure that those are good.
Guys, have a backup. If you sell Luxwell, have an extra. If you sell Ruckus, have an extra.
Yep.
Don't just show up on a site and be unable to complete the job.
Right.
Lastly, call tech support. Now, I want to add a caveat to that.
Okay.
Before you select a brand to carry, whether it's HDMI or networking or televisions or AVRs, call their tech support.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have a question, call their tech support. Do they speak English? Do you get an answer fairly quickly? Are you sitting on hold for 15 minutes? These are not joke questions.
Call up tech support and ask them about a product they have. This is a really easy way to have a reason for calling them.
And
Be
how
like,
it connects to another product.
Yeah, just say, hey, I'm speccing out a system and I need a device that does this. It looks like you have one. Tell me about it. What kind of problems could I run into? If you get an honest answer from them, really good people to talk to. That's what we try to do here. Of course, you know, we are award-winning tech support, and honestly,
and we are the tech support.
We are the tech support, and we try to do that. We really we try to live up to that award that we've garnered, earned
and
for
we're
that.
not there's actually 4 of us in tech support. The other 2 are camera shy.
Yep. So with that, that's kind of the last thing when it comes to troubleshooting. If you've gone through all of that and you're still running into problems, call up the tech support. Call up tech support and be like, hey, this is what I've done so far. They may or may not believe you and just want you to do it again. Now, honestly, do us in tech support a favor, run through it one more time just to make sure. Remember,
typically when you call, if you call a company like us, I love this tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 stuff.
Yeah.
And I love when I'm going to send you over to tier 2. That simply means that you're asking a question that individual's not that comfortable with.
Sure.
If you call and ask me about SpyClops,
you're tier 1.
I'm going to send you to Adam or Stuart or Lewis. If you call and ask some questions about antique hi-fi,
yeah,
they're going to send you to me.
Yep.
So tier 2 simply means, honestly, that is something I'm not comfortable answering. I'm going to send you the guy that has more experience in it.
Right.
If you call the cable company, we all know what that's going to be.
Right.
But they're going to ask you questions. They're going to ask you to do some things over again, and you're going to get frustrated. But honestly, do it because it gets them in the same place you are.
All right, I need that soapbox back.
Sorry.
Everybody, thank you for checking out today's episode. We are at an hour, so we need to go ahead and wrap it up today. Thank you so much for watching. And again,
don't forget your comments and your questions.
Yep, comments and questions.
Please
Leave them over in the chat or down in the comment section below.
Somebody's going to be a winner.
We want to give this away. We want to get it in somebody's hands so they can play around with it and use it. So please, please, please leave a comment in the comment section below or over in the chat while we're still here. And of course, like, share, and subscribe if we have helped you out today and given you some good information. If we've gotten something wrong, let us know.
Yeah, we will happily get corrected.
Yeah, exactly. So let us know, and keep checking in with us every week for more opportunities to win different devices and to get some good information out there. And as always, like, share, subscribe, hit that little bell notification. Find us on Facebook,
YouTube,
Twitter,
Instagram.
Yep, all the different areas.
And call tech support if you have any questions. But don't hesitate to call us. Plain and simply, if you just got a question, I'm designing a system. We love I'm designing a system questions.
Yep, those are the best ones.
Our goal is to get you in and out of the door with nothing on the back end. The job, really, you want to look like a god to your customer.
Yep.
And the more knowledge you have going in, the more godlike you look.
Exactly. Brent, reboot early.
Reboot often.
Don't cut your wires too short.
Call tech support.
Turn off CEC.
I'm Brent.
I'm Adam.
Have a great day.
Bye, guys. We'll see y'all next time. As always, if you have any questions, give us a call, 386-492-8584. Thank you so much.